Welcome to the Workplace Wellbeing Essentials series. I'm Mari Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of Advancing Wellness. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to this expert interview where we explore topics that impact employee well-being. My guest today is Jamie Larsen. Jamie is the founder and CEO of Generus. Jamie has always had a passion about community service. She first formed the idea that would become Generus while working to match college-age volunteers with Boston area charities. Her mission is to help companies engage their workforces, foster deeper connections and relationships, and impact their communities for good through employee-driven volunteering. Jamie earned a BA in Public Relations, Advertising, and Applied Communications from Brigham Young University. As an undergraduate, she received a special award for community service and giving, demonstrating her passion for volunteerism from an early age. She's an active volunteer in her community, in her church, and she is the mother of 5 children, ranging in age from 3 to 19. Her favorite pastime is road tripping with them to quirky museums around the U.S., and she leaves people and parties and Pop-Tarts and doing good in the world. She loves people, parties, and Pop-Tarts and doing good in the world. Jamie, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, Mari, thank you for the invitation to be here.
It's my pleasure. Our topic today is creating connection and community through volunteerism. Community and connection are 2 of the core elements of the model that we use for employee well-being. So they're 2 of those important dimensions. So today, as we explore this interconnection between the topic of volunteerism and how it impacts the well-being of those who are touched by the volunteerism. So this volunteering is not only good for those individuals who are receiving the volunteerism activities, but research is now showing that there are health benefits to the individuals actually doing the volunteer work. So Jamie, I'm curious from your experience, from your experience, Jamie, why is volunteerism good for our well-being?
Oh, that's a great question. So we know that people feel better when they volunteer. They feel better emotionally, they feel better socially, and they feel more connected. A recent study showed that it improved the mood of those that volunteered. 94% said it improved their mood, and 78% said it reduced stress levels. So I have to say, one of my favorite researchers and commenters on this particular topic is the past U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. And he's talked kind of extensively about this topic. And in particular, in 2017, he said, loneliness is the worst epidemic in America. Right. 47% of adults now in the U.S. have some type of loneliness that they're experiencing, which has huge repercussions for health. What they found is a much higher early mortality rate for people who are experiencing these symptoms. And in 2015, researchers at UCLA actually looked into what was happening in the body around this and the cellular changes that are happening to us. And loneliness is causing a stress reaction. And so with these rising levels of cortisol in our body, they're seeing increased inflammation. So they're seeing increases in things like heart disease and metastatic cancers and psychological disorders that we've known for a while. But Dr. Murthy explains it from kind of an evolutionary perspective, is that we used to all be sitting around the campfire and one of us would take turns keeping watch at night so that everyone else stayed safe and had a chance to sleep. and then we would rotate that job, but we needed one another, and that we still do today. And so when we're in a situation that we don't feel support, we don't feel like we belong, we don't feel like there's anyone we can turn to, it truly does affect
Mm.
our health. And so he and many others are really looking toward workplace as a place to help people find these really healthy connections.
Mm.
Um, Another thing that I think is super interesting, recently there was an article in Forbes that also talked about Maslow's kind of hierarchy of human needs and the modern day equivalent of what those should be. And they called it like the six fundamental human needs for a healthy life. And they kept the first four that Maslow had also taught us about, which is um, food, water, shelter, and sleep. But researchers, after another 75 years of research, have found that we also really desperately need others in our
Mm.
lives, and we need novelty. And this kind of coming together with others releases brain chemicals, in particular um, oxytocin, which is kind of the social bonding chemical. And this idea of novelty in our lives, or doing something new or learning something new, um, will release dopamine, which is not just pleasure as we've always thought, but also really a motivator.
Mhm.
So workplaces stand, if good brain chemicals are happening for their workers, and that's coming through volunteerism, that's making those things happen in their life, we're seeing a lot of health benefits from implementing volunteering programs at work.
Well, it certainly sounds like this is a great antidote for stress, which is
Yes.
wonderful because we all know that work is often a primary source of stress. And I'm curious from your experience, what are the benefits to the employers? So those are great benefits to us as
Yeah.
individuals when we're doing volunteer work, but what's the business case, so to speak, of why an employer would want to be doing this? What's the benefit to the employer of volunteerism?
So I would say first and foremost, it is about the culture in the workplace.
Mm.
That by having volunteerism as part of that workplace culture, you infuse it with this energy and direction toward things like helpfulness and caring and teamwork, and um, and that goes a long way with also creating these health benefits and lower stress. And one thing, CEOs and leaders of organizations can really be super effective in influencing employees around this when employees know that the work culture cares about these things,
Hmm.
and they see
Yeah.
this idea of
Yeah.
helpfulness being part of what's being talked about and what's valued. I think they feel safer and feel like it's a healthier environment.
Hmm.
Um, Beyond that culture, when we really get down to it, we can look at things like retention, engagement,
Right.
recruitment, and even employee advocacy as huge cost savings or value driven priorities that can come from having effective volunteering programs. If we just take turnover all by itself, um, right now, American businesses are looking at about a 10 to 15% a year turnover across industry. And if you equate that, they say, average, losing an employee, it takes about 33% of their yearly salary to replace them. So if you fast forward, take average salary, in our area, Greater Boston area, maybe 70,000 a year. Employers can be looking at up to, I think it's $30.5 million a year from this employee turnover cost. So all that we can reduce that in engaging workers and helping them, find friends at work and building these bonds is hugely valuable. Um, Engagement is another huge
Right.
topic that companies are talking about, that volunteerism can really have some impact on. And engagement is probably actually even costing companies more than turnover. Turnover is
Yeah.
easier to quantify, but Gallup estimates that companies are spending like 30.5 billion in turnover and 400 to 600 billion a year
Mhm.
in lost work, either from like cyber loafing or employees just not showing up for work and not really caring about the work they're doing. So many of these things, there's a huge dollar value for companies in engaging employees through volunteer work.
Well, it sure sounds like it. I'm curious as to whether employers are starting to create the link between volunteerism, the contributions to the community, and their brand. So we have some big sports teams here in New England, and
Yes.
volunteerism is a big part of some of those. I'm curious as to whether you're seeing companies really looking at this as part of their brand story.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say in this space, the companies that are doing that are doing some incredibly good things.
Mm.
I think what companies are struggling with the most right now, and even larger companies with, bigger budgets to work on this, is really engaging employees in the process of the volunteerism. Um, and that is, that's challenging to do. But over and over again, employees have told us they want to be part of the process and they want to be volunteering in groups.
Mhm.
So I would say those two things are super valuable for companies to pick up and run with.
Great. That's great. And when we're thinking about what employers can do, there's certainly a responsibility or a role that the employer can play in all of this by taking the lead. What can employers do to encourage volunteerism in their workforce?
Oh, this is a great question. Okay. This is in many reasons why I started Generus. Generus helps company run employee volunteering programs that are engaging for employees. And if you take this step of really putting employees in the driver's seat and letting their passions and cause interests kind of drive the work that is
Mhm.
being done, they need support in that, or it's tremendously costly for companies on the other side to have lost time from the
Right.
workers doing this. So Generous comes in and helps support workers and allows them to really be the high level decision makers on what charities the company's supporting. And we found that it really drives engagement and drives retention and just this overall feeling of goodness and an energy in an office.
Well, that's so wonderful because that's where the connections, that's where the community come into play. And
Yeah,
all of that is about well being.
great.
Jamie, if our
Absolutely.
audience wants to learn more about you and the work that you're doing, where can they find you?
Oh, find us on the web. We are at generous.net.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's just exciting to hear about the work you're doing, the impact that it's having, not only for the individuals in the companies that are doing this work, but in the communities and the charities where they're making those contributions.
Great. Thank you, Marie.
Thanks so much.